Okay, so you can see this panel, we're gonna discuss the community network sustainability. We're gonna touch upon some of the socio-economic development aspects of connectivity. We're also gonna discuss some of the business models. So it's gonna be a very interesting discussion and very important one as well. And I'm so happy and glad to see a very esteemed panel, experts from donor agencies, people from investment agencies, people from businesses background. So let's hope that for the next 2 hours or so we'll have an interactive discussion. And please feel free to jump in. I'll of course invite you to have questions. Recently say that it's going highland people who live in rural villages or places which are very scattered. There's not much population, there's not much return on investment for the commercial or traditional operators to go in, and that is where we have to fill the gap of connectivity. And of course, I don't have to emphasize on why the connectivity or why access to the internet is important. We all know that in today's world, if we want to have empowerment, if we want to have inclusivity in our communities for our people, internet is that one tool that that acts like a catalyst to open a whole bunch of platforms and opportunities, development, communication, information sharing, and you name it. I will start the discussion by just putting a question to all of you, and I'll invite all of you one by one. We have a couple of presentations as well. And to set the scene, I want to ask if you can share your perspective about, from your background, how you see the connectivity in the current era, and how you see it in the future, say next 2-3 years moving on. And what are your expectations or your thoughts about how connectivity has put in the socio-economic development in different parts of the world? And also, please tell us about some of the past experiences on the business models of the connectivity that has been played so far in different parts of the world. So I'll start with John from Connectivity Capital. Connectivity Capital is a new dimension of how you can ask for investment into connectivity, and I'm sure John is gonna share some very interesting perspective of how this new kind of investments are coming into play into the connectivity. So if I can have slides, John has some slides to share with us. Excellent. John, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Naveed. And if you don't mind, I'll just stand. It'll be easier for me to point towards the slides. There are a lot of questions there, so I will do my best to try and answer some of them. But by way of introduction, you mentioned asking us about our perspectives. But by way of introduction, my name is John Garrity. I've been working on telecom and digital infrastructure issues for the last 15 years. 10 years I was at Cisco in Washington, D.C., really running a lot of our engagements with governments on technology policy. After that, I was at USAID for a couple of years in the Global Development Lab, managing a lot of USAID's internet infrastructure investments in sub-Saharan Africa. Since then, I've moved to Southeast Asia, where in the Philippines, I'm helping UNDP design a 6,000 site free Wi-Fi public program, as well as continuing to work with the ITU on a last mile. But after Jane's comment, I think we should change it to a first mile connectivity toolkit, and working with Connectivity Capital. And I think the reason why I wanted to share that is it's really been an eye-opening experience learning about community networks and really seeing how community networks play a complementary role to the large ISPs, the large telco investments, and knowing that there's a place for community networks to be able to provide service. Connectivity Capital is an investment firm. We focus on debt investment for small operators. And so I just wanted to share some of the perspective on why Connectivity Capital exists and why it's focused on small operators, which includes local ISPs, but it also includes community networks. So one of the things that has been alluded to and discussed in length yesterday and then also today is that we know that roughly on average there's about half of the world's population that isn't currently participating in the digital economy. And what you're looking at here is data from GSMA, the main mobile network association, that shows that, this is a couple of years old now, but shows that around 4.2 billion people are not internet users, right? They're not internet subscribers. And if you break down that number, essentially what you see is you see about 1.6 billion people who are not living within a geographic area where they can access mobile data through cellular networks. That's 3G networks. So that's a network infrastructure expansion issue that is hindering the ability to participate online. But then there's about 2.6 or so billion people who are living within those geographic areas of 3G or mobile data coverage that are not participating because of affordability issues, that service is still prohibitively costly. And so this is a story around cellular networks, but we know that that's not the end of the story, actually, because a lot of people are accessing the internet, not through cellular communication, but also through Wi-Fi. And if you look at if you look at advanced economies and robust ecosystems in Western countries, in Japan, in Korea, what you see is that actually in the access network layer, the vast majority of people, or the vast majority of traffic that's getting to individual users isn't through cellular, it's actually through Wi-Fi. So this is illustrative, but this is based on Cisco Visual Networking Index information. But in a country like the United States or the UK, leaders in 4G and LTE, when it was launched, is that only about 4% of traffic that gets to users, internet traffic that gets to users, is through cellular. The rest is through Wi-Fi. However, when you look at frontier markets or emerging markets, that's actually inversed. And only, well, actually, it's mostly about 40% of the traffic that gets to users is through cellular markets. So what you see there is a sort of an environment where the terrestrial fiber infrastructure is not yet really built out to be able to allow internet service providers, to be able to allow community networks and other small operators to develop. So there's an opportunity here, and this is where entities like Connectivity Capital and other financing providers really are coming into play. So why don't we see a lot of the telcos actually going out into some of the rural and remote regions? This is data from GSMA themselves that say, hey, listen, the reason why the telcos don't want to go out into rural areas is because when you compare the cost of deployment per site between a remote or rural cellular base station tower versus an urban deployment, what you see is 30% higher CapEx costs, 100% higher OpEx costs, and in situations where you have 80% less users and overall 95% less revenue. So if you are a large telco who's publicly traded or you have fiduciary responsibility to your management, your shareholders, when you have one more dollar of investment money, where are you going to put that money? You're going to put that in your urban areas with high ARPU consumers, basically building out your LTE or your 5G infrastructure. So this basically begs the question of then, where's the investment money going to come from to be able to provide a lot of the financial support for entities that are building out into rural areas or to consumers that aren't the high ARPU, high average revenue per user consumer that wants LTE or 5G. When you look at the financing that comes from more of the development finance institutions, what you're looking at here is analysis from the Alliance for Affordable Internet that showed that, okay, between 2012 to 2016, around $500 billion went into development projects. Only 1% of that went to ICT related projects, so about $5 billion. And of that $5 billion, about 40% went into ICT infrastructure. However, However, the deal sizes of this funding are quite large. So the average deal size is around $30 million. So when you're talking about community networks, or when you're talking about a local ISP, a deal size of about $30 million is way too large for the absorptive capacity of these small operations. And Ramon from Guifi and I were talking about this morning. Even when you're looking at some of the excellent funding that's coming from the Connect Europe broadband fund, those deal sizes are still quite large. So we have to figure out a way to be able to sort of slice these large sums to sizes that can be absorbed by smaller entities like local ISPs, like community networks. So this is essentially the environment that we're seeing and why connectivity capital exists. We're seeing fiber infrastructure being built, not just undersea, but also terrestrial. This is happening across sub-Saharan Africa, across South Asia, where I live in Southeast Asia. A lot more fiber is coming into play on the terrestrial side. Falling capex, a lot of the community networks yesterday were talking about the falling price of capex equipment, basically using ubiquity and MikroTik gear. So that's giving the opportunity for these small entities to really be able to be competitive and purchase at a lower price point. MNOs are dominating in a lot of emerging markets, but they're dominating in ways that still allows for entities like community networks to fill the gaps where they're not providing service or where they're providing service at a higher price point. And we're seeing, of course, the decline in the cost of devices. You're seeing smartphones by folks like KaiOS and others that are dropping the cost of access devices to much lower price points. And then, of course, the explosion of apps that's really driving the demand for people to want to participate online. So as an investment vehicle, we really stress the fact that we see an opportunity here because small ISPs and community networks really play a complementary role with mobile network operators, that there's a lack of capital that's getting to these small entities because they don't have the absorptive capacity for these larger sums, and there aren't a whole lot of vehicles that slice and dice down to smaller levels. And we operate as a sector-specific debt fund to be able to properly price the risk that we see in infrastructure investments that maybe a commercial bank wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable with. So as an investment vehicle, this is just a slide showing some of our investments across Africa and South Asia. The entities in orange are, I think, particularly interesting for this crowd because they're ISPs. They're small ISPs that started off as community networks. So Air Jaldi started off, this is in northern India, started off as a community network in 2006. By 2009, they realized that they were growing and had so many subscribers that they needed to formalize. Today, Air Jaldi operates across 8 states in northern India with around 230 plus subscribers. So they started from a small community network to one that's a bit larger. Habari Node in Arusha, Tanzania is also an entity that started off as a community network and then realized that they needed to formalize because they were growing to such a large extent. And then there are a few others. Converged in Malawi, Mawingu in Western Kenya are wireless ISPs, and Too Much Wi-Fi is a wireless ISP that operates as a public Wi-Fi hotspot entity in the townships of Cape Town and Johannesburg in South Africa. So my last slide, just to share, I mean, to maybe try and answer the question. I mean, so we offer expansion capital to ISPs, small ISPs that either started off as community networks or are looking to expand. This is loan terms that are quite small when you compare to the large DFI investments. So loan terms between 200K to 2 million in size. And in terms of the requirements, these are small entities that are basically looking to expand. So we require that there's minimum revenue of at least 250K. And so these tend to be quite small, but showing promise, and they're cash flow positive. So let me end there just to say that from our perspective and our experience, the community network phenomenon is one that's very welcome. It's growing. It's one that demonstrates scale, a lot of potential to really also make a difference in a complementary approach to getting to universal access, not just focusing on MNOs, not just focusing on the large telcos, but allowing and supporting an environment where small entities like community networks and small ISPs can really flourish. So, stop there.
Thanks, John. Excellent. And one of the point that you I'm thinking about is like those legacy investments that have already been done in markets, especially where still we have a huge copper deployments done by incumbent. They might restrict investment into, you know, rolling out fiber optics, and we have seen the market, you know, dynamics where the legacy investments still kind of block the new rollout of fiber optic infrastructure. But at the same time, what I heard is that, you know, technological solutions like Wi-Fi, for example, bring an opportunity to come up with new business models. Right, and because previously Wi-Fi was also only something where you will have it inside your house, and now we see cities like Barcelona, for example, where you have a Wi-Fi network that connects the whole city. So this progress in new innovative business model is something that perhaps is to be looking into. And then TV white space, for example, is also something that, you know, tries to fill that gap where you can come up with new innovative business models to connect the unconnected. Excellent, John, for it. I'll come back to you later as well in the second part of discussion. Now I'll move to our esteemed panelists from European Investment Bank, Maciej, Czura. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Okay, excellent. So Maciej, please share your perspective from the European Investment Bank.
Good morning. It's still morning. To all the distinguished guests, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure also for the reason that digital services and digital inclusion are one of the key priorities of the European Investment Bank as the institution of the European Union and its financial arm both inside the EU and beyond. I'm saying this also because now digital economy is becoming really one of the key priorities. If we look back to the program of President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, it is clear that EU must lead the transition to, first of all, healthy planet and a new digital world. And both of these objectives are key objectives of the European Investment Bank. And here, maybe just to give you some overview, what we've been doing in the region under our EU external lending mandate for the Eastern Partnership. We've been investing in social and economic infrastructure, development of private sector and climate change mitigation and adaptation. Globally, in the digital sector, over the last 10 years, European Investment Bank financed approximately 31 billion euro of loans to the digital economy, and there were a number of projects varying between 4 million to 750 million euro in different areas. Of course, digital economy is very multifaceted and very differentiated topic. And it can encompasses investments of various kinds, both in very important core infrastructure, like broadband connections between countries, between continents, then backbone infrastructure within the countries and user infrastructure. But what is especially very important for us as we look at the sector with our experience is to look at it holistically, also in financial terms, because sometimes, and as you correctly pointed out, and also in keynote speeches, it was very clear that sometimes it's very difficult financially to develop infrastructure to the areas that are not dense, that are rural. If we look at the map, for example, Georgia, but also any other countries in all other parts of the world, we see that it's the matter of inclusion. And as the economy becomes more digital, as the life becomes more digital, it's even more the topic of social inclusion. In order to have this infrastructure in rural areas, we need also to take care of the other side of the equation, which is digital solutions, digital services, to provide infrastructure, to provide connection to citizens, to the population, and at the same time to give operators, opportunity, be it government-owned operators, be it private, to economize on it. So, in other words, to increase average revenue per user. Of course, we here in the region we are financing mostly infrastructure with the government, but all over the world we say that one part of this equation is infrastructure financing. So, operators developing of backbone broadband infrastructure, developing infrastructure for internet access with sovereign and sub-sovereign entities, for example, local communities. But then at the same time, to support the business, to develop and offer digital services and digital solutions to be used by the population. I also wanted to make a point about financial products that can be used for that very purpose here in Georgia, and here we have very wide palette of solutions to work together with the governments and local governments to develop some affordable financing schemes for financing infrastructure, especially when it comes to broadband, which in many countries and non-dense areas is the part of the infrastructure for digital access that is missing. And secondly, also with innovative approach for corporate sector. I wanted to point out here another very important document which was prepared by European Commission is Digital for Development Strategy. And this was the basis for us and our colleagues from the European Commission and also from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development to prepare a new initiative which is currently at the stage of approval under so-called European Fund for Strategic Investments, which is used outside of EU, is Digital Transformation Platform. And this program containing some kind of credit facilitation in form of first loss guarantee from the European Union will allow us to finance projects related to digital inclusion across the whole neighborhood of the EU, so effectively from Morocco to Armenia and then further Belarus. So this program will be ongoing and will be accessible to counterparts who want to develop the digital services or digital infrastructure or both. So maybe now I will finish to give the other participants opportunity to speak, but of course I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting spotlight of the digital economy when I heard about it, and it brings me to the thoughts that the governments or the development agency or investment agencies, perhaps we have to think that when now we are in the era of digital economy and shared economy. There is a project in South Africa I was studying yesterday, and it's very interesting that the local municipality actually deployed a community network. It provides free internet service, but the idea is that the people, when they get the connectivity, they start doing the economics services, and that actually generates taxes, revenue back to the government. So that was a very interesting concept, and it totally relates how important in this era of digital economy is that you provide that connectivity to those people. They will start using that service, and they will eventually do those economical activities that will bring the revenue back in terms of taxes, etc., etc. So thank you again. I'll now move to the development agencies, and I'll come to Abdulaziz from World Bank. Thank you for joining us here. I was reading this report from World Bank, which came out last year in December. is about innovating business models to bridge the access gaps. It talks a lot about fiber optics, but then it talks about other solutions as well. So please share your perspective and your thoughts, and also if you can touch upon some of those highlights from that very excellent and interesting report, that would be very useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Naveed. So just to kind of echo what was said earlier also in the opening session, I think connectivity, the way we see it, is key to inclusive growth. And in a country like Georgia, where you see a lot of smallholder farmers, you see a lot of sort of boutique vineyards or small touristic destinations, or small businesses running sort of tourist destinations, you have to think about how do these people get to access the digital economy. And of course, broadband connectivity is key. But when you look at connectivity, we look at the broader infrastructure connectivity, right? So if you have internet access and you're a small sort of boutique hotel in one of the mountainous regions of Georgia, you need someone to actually drive out to get to that. You can sell your package online, but you need the road that will take people to get to that location. You also need the electricity connection that will allow your guests to have some form of access to the Wi-Fi that you will need to run while there. So I think obviously we're here to talk about digital connectivity, but I think it's very important to look at connectivity in a much more broader sense. And that's how we like to, kind of see it as well. And we work with the government, both in Georgia and other places, to do that. And of course, with internet connectivity, there's a role for a public sector and the private sector. And we see ourselves as trying to intervene, as Garrett mentioned earlier, where there is a last mile connection that is not bankable for an investor or an ISP. What we try to do, and this is kind of emblematic of our program here in Georgia, is to actually invest in the middle mile connection, the highways, as we also do in electricity transmission, for example, or in highways, actual physical highways for cars. We see that that's the role that the public sector or institution like the World Bank can play, but then we want to bring in the ISPs and the private sector to invest in the final sort of nodes that will connect to the customer. So we don't necessarily see this as purely driven by the private sector, nor only by the public sector. And that's kind of an important way of thinking about, again, the inclusive growth model for a country like Georgia. So, from our perspective, I don't want to go specifically into the report, if you don't mind, but I just wanted to kind of touch on those things. And one of the things that we are working on right now is a project on broadband connectivity with the government. Our engagement spans both infrastructure investment, but also developing or helping the government develop their broadband development strategy, right? So looking at what are the benchmarks that they need to achieve for minimum, speed of connectivity. How do you define, white zones, gray zones, etc. So really focusing on the broader picture, in addition to then kind of making surgical interventions on the infrastructure side to connect the remote villages that are up to 700 in Georgia that don't have access. So a country like Georgia, when you see statistically speaking, about 2/3 have access to broadband connectivity. But if you segment that into urban and rural, you see that urban is over 80 and rural is 50. Right around 50%. That's pretty low. And so it's actually consistent with data that Garrett presented earlier about global connectivity. But the fact is, in Georgia, this is primarily, a rural, connectivity issue. And as I said earlier in my kind of opening words, in a place like Georgia, where you rely a lot on small businesses to develop the economy and to be a source of economic growth, you really need to facilitate access to the digital economy so that they can reach out to tourists like yourself who've never come to Georgia, but you can book a package online in a place that you never thought existed, right? So I think in that sense, there is a lot of potential in Georgia for these types of interventions. And I'll stop here and then happy to follow up later on.
Thank you, Abdulaziz. Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the opportunities that these kind of small networks can bring is how they can then flourish the local content and local applications. And I think it is also very relevant if we want to have local community empowered, managed, or operating their own network. that is also important that we tell them that this is an opportunity to come up with their own local content and services. And I also agree on this middle mile investment where we have to increase the capacity of the backhaul. So I was going through some of the studies recently in many countries in Asia Pacific, for example, and I saw that still there are a lot of gaps in terms of the backhaul connectivity. So, and it's very important. I mean, until or unless you have this big pipe that can, of course, give that last mile connectivity opportunities, you cannot promise all those, I don't know how many gigabit or megabit per second. It's impossible, and that's some discussion that I was having some of the regulators with regards to 5G as well. And we were talking about how it's important it is to make the fiberization of your backhaul or those towers to make sure that the users are able to get the optimum or excellent speed. I'll now move to Peter from USAID. Thank you, Peter, for joining us, and please share the perspective of you from the USAID side, and especially from the Georgian side. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having us here. And this is a really rich discussion, and I'm happy to join it and offer some thoughts. I'm going to try to go in a little bit of a different direction because I think we've heard a lot from the investment bank side and from the World Bank perspective, and we've heard about the economics of connectivity. I want to talk a little bit about some of the political and governance sides here. But just to start off with, Abdulaziz mentioned that connectivity is central to inclusive growth, and certainly a lot of our programs in country here, along with many of our colleagues, are trying to contribute to that broader goal. At USAID, we're also trying to move our assistance and orient it towards a concept of promoting self-reliance in Georgia, promoting Georgia's own self-reliance. And what that means in English is to help Georgia develop and strengthen its capacity to plan, manage, and implement its own political and economic development. And so what we're trying to do through all of our interventions, whether it's economic growth programming or some of our democracy and governance projects, is to try to strengthen Georgia's self-reliance. And obviously, communities that are connected to the broader economy in the country, as well as to the rest of the world, the region and the world, are going to be stronger economically. They're also going to be stronger socially and politically, we think. And so that idea of trying to promote greater inclusion, as I think Maciej and others mentioned, not just for the economic aspect, but also for the social and let's say political or democratic aspect, is really very, very important for us at USAID. I think there's a corollary to it, which is that communities that are connected and more included in the activities and the ongoing energy of the country are also more resilient and less vulnerable to external shocks, whether those are economic shocks or other kinds of shocks. And so we're trying to also strengthen the resilience of communities in Georgia, whether those are mountainous communities that are not connected to the internet, or communities along the administrative boundary lines near the Russian-occupied territories. So promoting that resilience and reducing the vulnerability of Georgia's citizens and its communities to shocks is a key element of what we are trying to achieve on behalf of the American people and the U.S. government here in country. I wanted to highlight I don't want to steal Jan's thunder. I don't know, Jan, if you were going to talk about this, the Mountain Network, Community Network project that we've worked on and a number of folks here have worked on. I wanted just to give an example of the power of collaboration and also local initiative that I think stands as a great model, not just for this conference and for this community, but for anybody interested in development in Georgia. USAID, just to speak on the USAID part, USAID through our civil society program made a very small $15,000 grant to an organization in Tel Aviv, the Center for Civic Activities, and I don't know if the director is here. I think he was here yesterday, but Ucha certainly was also very, very active, not from the Center for Civic Activities, but from the group that's of small and medium-sized telecom operators. But this project that we supported was basically an internetification project for the Faghi and Cernik regions here in Georgia. This $15,000 USAID, US American taxpayer investment has now been leveraged into, I think, about a 400,000 gel, or about a $140,000 project that's spanning, I think, and is going to essentially provide Wi-Fi to 76 villages in these regions in Georgia, and as a result of which those communities will now be able to not just access government services better and get connected to what's going on in the rest of Georgia and the world a lot easier than they did in the past. They're also going to be able to affect what's happening in their community and in the national community at large. So in other words, they're going to be able to engage more actively, more effectively, more often than they were certainly able to do in the past. That's a key thing for USAID. I think that's a great thing for Georgia's development, whether it's from the economic aspect or the political side. The second reason I think it's a really great model is that not only was this kind of international donors working together, but the Georgian government has provided substantial funding for the initiative. As a result, the private sector has been involved. Local communities and local governments have also contributed to this. And perhaps most importantly, as I understand from Czura and others, this project was really developed and owned by local actors. Right? This was a project that really started at the local level, that was led by Georgians, that was really tapping different kinds of expertise, financial resources, human resources from a number of communities in these affected regions, but also was really led, managed, and owned by Georgians. And I think that's a really key thing, and those are certainly the types of projects that USAID is looking for, and I'm sure some of my other donor colleagues are looking to try to support these types of things in the future as well. I will stop there, but I do think that that project is something we at USAID are really proud of, but I think many people here can look to and learn from this type of activity for other types of areas in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Absolutely, collaboration. I mean, I think that's the key word, and how these kind of projects can actually embrace collaboration, where not only the international agencies, but the local investment people, and then of course the community on the ground is the participatory actor in these kind of solutions, and they feel like this thing is being owned. And I remember the video that Usha was showing us yesterday. I mean, some of the highlights of that video really were so emotional in terms that they had this human touch. And when I was sitting there and I was watching that grandmother making a call to her grandchild somewhere and talking and telling that now we are connected and we can talk every day. It's like, person like me who come from an urban background, and perhaps for me, internet, maybe I take it for granted, so I can just relate that how important that one WhatsApp video call is for that grandmother. So thank you so much, Peter, for sharing that collaboration. I really like it. So I'll now move to Jan about tell us more about this investments and this so much of focus that you gave into this project from the Czech Republic Embassy. It was so fascinating to know this. So please tell us more about it.
Thank you, Naveed. Thank you that I can share some experience with you. I'm here on behalf of Czech Development Cooperation, and I should repeat some words already said. Georgia, one of crucial problems of Georgia is a regional inequality. Here are inequalities in education, healthcare accessibility in remote areas, in mountainous areas, and also many communities are impacted by occupied territories, the situation at administrative borderline. So Czech Republic has developed an approach of rural development cooperation. We are not a huge donor, but we received this opportunity to cooperate with a local-based organization in several mountainous regions, like Tusheti, Faghi, and Rati. I think it's the same story like USAID has. We supported part of these projects to improve connectivity in these remote areas, and it has a wider context. We try to puzzling several projects, several project activities in these regions. Nevertheless, there are very differentiated. We try to support local community through leader approach. We try to support small and medium enterprises in all of these regions, and we would like to contribute to better governance of these remote areas. Our key partner are local governance, Ahmeta and Tusheti, and we try to prepare them for good governance of protected landscape areas. Important component is biodiversity and cultural landscape protection. Also, our approach work with municipalities which are empowered with extended competence to manage local protected landscape. So, to brief, we try to invest into natural resource management, pasture management, inventarization of forest, and connectivity plays a very important role in this. Also, tourism infrastructure. We try to prepare all of these regions for inflow of tourists. We made it already in Tusheti. Rati may confirm that, hopefully. And we are going to invest in tourism infrastructure in Faghi, Rati, and Gudamakari in future. And again, connectivity will boost up the effect and impact of our future projects or ongoing projects, as well as accessibility to healthcare. Again, I think community and visitors can benefit from connectivity naturally. Last but not least, education. We would like to work with several schools, and these schools might be center of excellence for education, even in summer, for visitors about climate change and other environmental issues in these areas. To conclude, connectivity is a kind of empowering effect for our projects focused on rural development of mountainous areas. I think it also means a very good lessons learned for us. We would like to accumulate this practice and replicate that in other regions of Georgia. Thank you.
Oh, good. Excellent. And since we'll talk about sustainability as well, of course, I mean, we are talking, these are kind of some models which are working, which are in practice, but it's also important to discuss how we sustain this. I mean, this is something which, of course, is there and it's remained there. And one of the point that you bring into this, and what I'm thinking is, like, for example, this education, or maybe, you know, such kind of services or facilities that you can provide to the community, that naturally can bring the sustainability part of it as well, you know. So for example, if there is the ownership and the community wants to keep on running these kind of solution and this connectivity to go on, because they think it's not only getting some information, but on the top of it, there are some other benefits as well. For example, education or healthcare or remote tourism as well. So I think that's something that will come on in the later part. Now let's go to Rati from Tusheti Development Fund and hear more about the story and how this business model or this model of connectivity is operational.
Thank you, Naveed. Maybe I will go to have some slides. And thank you for having me. Thank you from, not from my side, I mean from the Tusheti community I represent. This is high mountainous region. I will put up some slides. We are talking about the digitalization, inclusive growth, economic growth in general, but there are the remote regions which really lack not only, I mean, let's say, high-speed internet to boost the economy, but also many other resources, including, it was mentioned, even electricity, sometimes gas, or all of this stuff. And imagine how big impact is that when you can. I personally sometimes go and work from these remote areas when we have the connection, right? And this is really big kind of impact for such a region. So you probably know this is one of the small, beautiful but harsh environment in Georgia on the border of Chechnya and Dagestan. It is the house of highest settlement in Europe, not only in Georgia, and many other things what Tusheti has. But it really requires to have more access, to be kind of promoted, also to have a diversified economy, not only livestock, which used to be the historical, and we still keep to going. For example, sheep breeding, which is one of the best in this case. But such regions really need to kind of have more opportunities, and in this sense, internet, which is community-based, really helps. It's just some pictures. I'm sure you know. And let me go with a very, very simple triangular kind of diagram. Why and how and what. Let's start with why. So this region, as you saw, it is only accessible for 4 or 5 months a year by car, and then the rest is really isolated. That's why Tusheti is one of the isolated regions of Georgia. And the mobile coverage is only 40% of villages can get a mobile coverage out of these 52 villages in Tusheti. So today we are covering almost all villages, and this is why we and donors stepped in, and we all together stepped in. And nowadays we are covering almost 100%. Next year we will cover with Czech embassy money, we will cover the 100% of the villages, and maybe we can connect also with Pshauchev-Sureti project. This is a plan with a blue line. So this is why, how. Not easy at all. We talked yesterday about this technical part. High mountains, you need to bring stuff with helicopter, with horse, and if you are lucky, by car. And of course, everything is built up with solar energy. You know how difficult is that, because Tusheti does not have any central electric system. There is only one small village which has small HPP, hydropower plant, and the rest is just without electricity. And thanks again with Czech embassy, a few years ago they bought solar panels for the locals, and this is kind of having internet is kind of built up of the continuation of such a development projects that donors are bringing to such regions like Tusheti. So and how? This is the biggest question, and also for sustainability point of view, because we are talking about, of course, this development and how sustainable it will be. I mean, maybe it is a question, it spins up to our mind, because this is community network, it should be sustainable financially, technically, socially. So, and this is a kind of enabling environment which makes this kind of community networks. I might speaking and kind of giving recommendations, but this is as far as this is a first community network in Georgia, we are learning a lot of lessons, and we are happy to share even today and to other platforms also. So from the financial support, of course, first seed money was coming from ISOC. And the huge part of it, together with the ministry, it was technical support for the community trainings, how to utilize the internet, because one is having internet, but the most important part is to utilize it to get a benefit out of it. Of course, the municipality, local municipality also helps us to deploy the internet during the winter. We are the only few people stays here, and we supply internet for free during the winter time. This is also the stimuli for the people whoever stays here, and we see this last 2-3 years that more and more people are returning and stays here. Of course, it is not only because of internet, but if there is a small share that internet kind of push these people to return, this is of course very good for all of us. And last year with the Czech Development Agency's small grant, we were able, even today, the one village in Pirikiti Tusheti, Chesho, was unconnected without any coverage of mobile, and today the only one man lives, and we were able to provide internet to this guy, and now he is connected. So this is only one example. Of course, this is a villages sometimes, and yesterday we had also a small movie about this, how the big impact it could bring. Implementation support, technical part, thanks UCHA, of course, and local ICP, Freenet. In the time it was named Freenet, and Tusheti Development Fund, which I represent. How important is also to have this technical support, because this is high-tech technology. You know, this is not easy to use, and how we and the community was treated. For example, my colleague Czura, who is now specialist in these technologies from Tusheti Development Fund, this is also brought because of this huge support. And the general support, of course, it was a lot of talk about the political environment in general, which enables digitalization, and in this case, this GNCC, of course, helps Tusheti Development Fund also to have such kind of possibilities. And beneficiaries, the people who live here, and this is what we are working for. So in numbers, what we got so far is that there is 52 villages in Tusheti, and only 21 villages has mobile coverage, and 48 has internet coverage. But when we are talking that they have coverage, it means that we can connect those people, but right now only 18 villages are using it. Of course, some of the villages are nobody lives here, but still during the summertime when people go there, they need, of course, even electricity to get to receive the internet for sure. So this is one of our next step, because we now have covered almost almost all villages of Tusheti, but there is still development need. For example, to enable those villages and the households living there to make better living. Using also internet, of course. And the biggest impact, I'm repeating this yesterday also and today, there is 10 villages right now who is connected, and the internet connection is the only source, no mobile coverage. So when you go there, maybe next summer, because the road is closed already, you will see that small guest houses, farms are getting renovated. Some of them are, of course, receiving tourists, and some of them are involved in preparing food, serving food, and all of the services what tourism brings, and agrotourism, which is very good match in this sense, agriculture and tourism. This is two main economic sectors Tusheti has. So, and this is the biggest impact we see so far. This is only 3 years, and more should come later on, of course. And about the development plan, so in sustainability, where we are talking about sustainability, I might stop here because it's gonna go with a Q&A session, so I will talk about the sustainability later on. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Rati, for telling us more about this amazing project which has been done. So I'll take a pause and I'll just come to you folks. Any question at this particular? Oh, I see one.
Thank you, Mira Blabadze. I teach in Ilya State and TSU e-governance and IT in public administration. I have a question regarding the OpenNet. So if OpenNet is finally delivered, what does it mean for the smaller villages? Is there any plans to connect through community network initiatives the rest? I mean, it targets, say, settlements with 200 participants and more, but there for sure should be left some settlements with a less number of people living. So are there any plans to somehow match to this initiative, so to develop further OpenNet to expand on the smaller villages? Thank you.
So you're looking at me, you guys.
Yeah, you're the first contact point here for that. So.
I'm just judging by the eye contact. Okay. No, so the OpenNet is, as you mentioned, as you probably know, is a government initiative. The World Bank role is to support the OpenNet. It is, of course, a work in progress. Their main objective is to, in fact, basically piggyback on this community network approach, which is connecting 700 or more potentially villages to broadband internet. So the program itself is kind of fundamentally starting from that point. How it evolves and whether or not it expands or shrinks, that's kind of still work in progress. So I don't have any specific details about where it will be in kind of 5 years or so.
I can add only, yes, in Tusheti there are small villages, but we can evidence bigger villages in Aragvi protected landscape. There are villages like Magarovskary or Kitochi or Barisacho. So there are permanent inhabitants, permanent dwellers, but also our target group are these temporal visitors or temporal settlers. From Tusheti we had lessons learned that members of community, temporal members of community, usually based in Tel Aviv or in Akhmeta district, even in Tbilisi, are very effective agent of development. And the internet connectivity allow them to bring innovations and allow them to keep connection with the world and be more active. These temporal community members. So that's just adding.
I hope it was answered. Any more questions? Yes. Yes, please.
Madluba.
Thank you. I have questions to Rati. You mentioned mobile telephony problem. Only 40% 40 is covered by mobile telephony. This is an issue in other regions as well. I wonder what you think. How can we tackle this issue? And do mobile telephony operators help and assist you? Are they at all interested? Thank you for the question.
Okay, we have mobile operators since 2004, I believe, from 2004. All of them, the three big operators in Georgia, they are represented in Tusheti. But if you ask them, such kind of projects are not profitable. So they are doing it for, I don't know, for whatever reasons, which is probably their goodwill, which is very good, and thanks to them. But we do not see any development since, I don't know, last 10 years. So all of them are covering the biggest villages and center villages in Tusheti, but none of them would like to deploy or cover more areas of Tusheti. And what we saw, this development of tourism also kind of aggregated on the center villages, and the remote villages are really without any economic opportunities. So then we see that more and more villages are getting abandoned for that reason, but nobody would like to stay for a week or two without any connection. This is digitalized world, so you know, that's why I don't know, we do not cooperate in that sense. We would be happy if they cover more, because we are talking about broadband internet. It is not only, let's say, I mean, connection for those people, right? It is high-speed internet. And when we are talking about tourism, we see a lot of a big change in terms of bookings, for example, on Booking.com, Airbnb. And this is one thing is just connection, and another thing is kind of opportunities that the broadband internet brings.
Maybe if I can just add more generally, I think one of the things that the mobile industry globally has disclosed through the reports from GSMA is that in order for any given mobile network operator to provide service to an area in the lowest cost structure that they can deploy, they need at least 5,000 or so users, active users, within a radius of 10 to 15 kilometers. So if you have communities that have a lot lower population numbers within that sort of a geographic area, it's much more difficult, and it's not cost effective for mobile network operators to do that. That being said, there are a lot of innovations that are happening now where mobile network operators are starting to deploy smaller towers that are running off of solar power, so their OpEx structure is lower. So there's innovations there where you're starting to see some MNOs going out into some smaller communities, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. But I think that it's still not necessarily as profitable for them to do so, and so they'll focus on urban areas.
Okay. Jane.
Thank you very much. I have a very practical question for any and all of you. We've been doing this type of work for over 10 years, and in the last 3, we've really ramped it up with partners like you. So what is it you need from an organization like the Internet Society to see more about the impact of community networks? Do you need videos? Do you need data? Do you need stories? What is it we can do to help get that message out so that more people like you can help amplify that donor and the empowerment at the local level? Because what our philosophy is local connectivity and local people being sustained to create that local connectivity. But from a very practical level, I'm from a practical place in the United States, what can we do to help you? Because we just launched a network in a remote island yesterday. So we're really excited. I just sent a tweet that said from the high mountains of Georgia to the high mountains of this island. So what else do you need from us and from any of you? Like, what is it that compels you to do something when you see it?
I can start. So again, I'm speaking only on behalf of USAID, but certainly what increasingly we are looking for, not only in Georgia, but also I think all across the world, is enterprise-led, private sector-led solutions. That doesn't mean that there's no role for international donors or the government or local governments, the national government or local governments, but I think really what we're trying to do is put the private sector at the heart of anything that we are considering supporting or investing in. So I think that's one part. Second is relevant to the topic for this particular panel is what's the prospect for sustainability? How can this thing, whatever we're talking about, any initiative, be carried forward in a way that is not dependent or reliant on one source of political will, one source of funding stream, you know, all that stuff, things that you know very well, I'm sure. The third is that you ask about stories, or you mentioned stories, or we're really looking for data now, and there's been a sort of seismic shift at USAID, and I know a number of my colleagues have been working in institutions that are much more data focused and have been much more data focused. USAID is trying to catch up in that regard, and so we're really looking for a lot more data that's showing how we're making a difference or how we're making progress towards the problem, whatever that defined problem might be. So I hope that's helpful.
I can react as well. I think we face to certain limits in good governance at local level, especially for this data demanding issues like forest inventarization and pasture management. Maybe our focus on education and also healthcare, telemedicine, connection between secondary healthcare and hospitals with somebody in remote villages would be issue. There are plenty of ideas, but to focus on community benefit. There is a very interesting project in Tusheti, as I know, this SAP job, and which allows the local community to participate in democratic way on governance, and there might be also some kind of platform. We are ready to replicate this practice in other regions. Maybe it would be also a field to allow people to participate in some democratic governance at a real micro level. Thank you for this question.
Maybe I will go also. From a community network perspective, ISOC brought investment, deployed internet, and promoted Tusheti in general, because later on I might highlight that for sustainability of community network, particularly Tusheti, which I'm familiar with, is that the strong private sector is a key aspect of sustainability. So we enable them with the internet, we promoted the region, which is very much based, I mean, the income is very much based on tourism. So what you need for tourism is, of course, one of them is a promotion of the region. But for sustainability, of course, it takes all, the social capital, also trainings in terms of, because some families have internet, some guest houses have internet, but they have it because the tourists would like to have Wi-Fi. But they don't know how to use it properly to promote the guest houses or farm life or products they sell it, or how to go internet and get e-services starting from e-governments to e-commerce, e-banking, whatever. So another, the big challenge we saw is these trainings to make people use internet as more as possible. And another one for sustainability point of view from Tusheti project is one is that if we are talking about, of course, this technology also breaks down sometimes and it requires replacement. We built up this reverse fund, reserve fund, but sometimes it is not enough, because if this field technology breaks down, then it takes thousands of dollars. So in this case, the project, follow-up project like Czech Development Agency helped us also to strengthen the system, and in order to reach the sustainability point with our calculations, it takes about 120 users, which we are now about 60% of it. So before reaching that, it should be followed up with some kind of support also from financial and technical, like these trainings and enabling this private sector to kind of make more out of it. Yeah. Okay.
May I also just add to what my colleague said, and I agree with Peter definitely on the data side. Data drives a lot of decision making, of course. But to be practical, since you asked for practicality, I think one of the things that are important, at least we see is important, is access to the internet in itself is good, but then what do people do with the internet? And so the use cases is something that we are very much interested in. We don't, necessarily think that there's internet connection to a village and people are going to play Fortnite all day, but we think that there is going to be a potential for economic activity. I don't want to say productive use, because productivity can be defined in many ways, but I think you get my point. So if you can help, with the Internet Society can help the government, help us, help civil society, the private sector, identify in various parts of the country what would people be using the internet for. That would be tremendously helpful, because that will inform a lot of decision making around extending connectivity in those areas, and also informing the development prospects of those areas that are being connected to the internet in terms of what do they do with that connectivity.
Yes. Now, to respond, I wanted to come back to this equation I presented at the beginning, that infrastructure in terms of digital economy serves providing the channels for services of different kind, yes, social, e-government, commerce, and I think this is the key. Of course, the access to digital infrastructure is not a question, it's a necessity. Everybody should have it. Even if we look at the broadband strategy of Georgia, the target is by 2022 or 2025 to have almost 100% coverage, and this is of course the necessity. What we do with this access, then we need actions on different fields, because we as European Investment Bank are very much focused, for example, in Georgia on financial inclusion, on access to finance, on technical assistance for businesses in general. This is one of the options to provide users opportunities of doing economic activity based on that new excellent feature. Yes, so here someone mentioned Booking.com and in Tusheti that it increased, but there can be plenty of other issues like this. Then on top of this, e-government, especially in isolated areas, e-education, healthcare, everything that builds the new digital society, which in some areas of the world is already developing very rapidly, in some areas not. So I think that this would be the key, but it requires obviously actions not only in the area of infrastructure access, but also on the area of using it. Thank you.
I think I'll also add a few words to make it a family affair, so everybody joins on this one. A couple of things. One, I think my colleagues have talked a lot about the articulation of social returns to the investments that you all are making in community networks, and I think that's very important, particularly for the type of funding that's coming in the form of grant money that's looking for that social return, whether it's impacting social development issues, economic growth, et cetera. And in fact, USAID came out with a great report called Connecting to Invest that articulates the pathways of connectivity investments that then accrued in different sectors. But that's on the social return side. I want to speak more from the private return side, and I think from an entity like Connectivity Capital that looks to invest in small operators, there's really, there's of course specific financial metrics that we look to, but essentially it's all about impact. And impact from an investor perspective in some of these small entities really comes to around two things. One is sustainability. I think we really need to demonstrate that an entity is sustainable. And the Tusheti example, reading the report yesterday, I mean, there's a full business plan that focuses on sustainability. So that's definitely something to further articulate. And then the other aspect to impact from an entity like Connectivity Capital is really scale. Right, trying to see that these entities can scale on their own so that the investments that are made then can grow. And from a financial metrics side, we look at things like net positive cash flow. We look at current assets over liabilities, so the current ratio, things like debt to equity. So there are specific metrics that we look at. And the more that I think entities like ISOC can articulate the social returns as well as the private returns to these investments, the better for the sector.
Excellent. So there are, of course, few case books in terms that what we have done in giving the grants or being a donor into this space that we, of course, will be share. But very quickly, two examples. One is from India, Rajasthan, and one is from Multan, Pakistan. What we did in India is that we went to Rajasthan, and it's a place in India where it's very famous for its folk music and also for the handicraft. So there were women who were weaving some extraordinary designs. The problem was that they had to give it to their men who have to drive to 50 kilometers into the city and eventually sell it on a shop. So what we did through this community network is that we tried to make a marketplace where we gave them a direct access to the market using internet, so they were able to sell their products sitting in the home. And that actually started not a lot of, but a little bit of revenue generation, and that got a lot of interest. And even then there were some YouTube videos which got very famous, where the folk people actually started, singing and then putting those videos on YouTube and then measuring how many people are viewing it, and etc., etc. So that's one example on that. In Pakistan, what we did is that we run a 3-month supplement education course. So we went to this village, we connected that village using a community network, and then we came back to Islamabad. We talked to some school teachers and said that these school girls of 6th grade, they want to learn more about English, math, and science. because these are three subjects where they think they need more, progress, more understanding. So we run this 3-month course using internet, where our teacher sitting in Islamabad was giving 1 hour lecture 3 days a week to these schoolgirls. And the impact that we had when we did the assessment, one was the attendance increase. These girls previously, sometimes due to their parents, because they are expected to stay at home and help the mother, were more regular to the class, and they don't used to miss that online class where to them there was a fascination of a big screen, a teacher from Islamabad, a big capital city in Pakistan, teaching them English, math, and science. And the second impact or assessment that we did was that we gave them a quiz before we started the course, and then we gave them the same quiz after we finished this 3 months course. And there was substantial change in their understanding on particular topics in English, math, and science. So we like to share these stories, of course, and that would be something that might be useful, and see how the societal impact that John was talking about comes into play. Okay, let's move on. You have a question? Okay.
Let me greet you all, Tusheti municipality, Gudamahari community. Malhastiklar is my name. First of all, thank you enormously, gentlemen, for this tremendous job, for this excellent project that has had a huge value added in the high-trained region on elevating the living standards and making our social conditions better. I understand that Tusheti, Pshavi, Hefsureti are developing, and internet access is most important. In Gudamahari, we just started the construction, and thank you. I thank all the donor agencies and Ucha Seturi, who is here with us, and 24/7. 365 days a year, we have been together to help the local community and to make them happy. I can never thank you enough. Mr. Wiebler, Mr. Kali, you are tremendous. And 80 kilometers from Tbilisi, we are in Gudamahari, if not more. If we get more services developed, if we have more businesses, the ecotourism, that will be the dream come true. Once again, thank you so much, gentlemen, all of you, and thank you for paying such high attention to Gudamahari. მე მინდოდა მეთქვა დიდი ტაშიო, იმიტომ რომ ესეთი კითხვები ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანია და ესეთი კომენტარები და შენიშვნები რა თქმა უნდა დადებითად მე წარმოვადგენ სათემო ქსელს ჩვენი მხრიდან, ჩვენ დიდი სიამოვნებით გაგიზიარებთ ინფორმაციას, რაც გვისწავლია ამ პრაქტიკის ფარგლებში და უჩასთან ვაკეთებთ ამას ყველაფერს, ის წარმართავს ფშავ-ხევსურეთის მიმართულებას და როგორც ბატონმა ბრძანა, ტურიზმი არის ერთ-ერთი მიმართულება და ალბათ
of Georgia to make such kind of projects sustainable. When I'm talking about the strong private sector, this private sector is pretty much is about people and who are involved in tourism in this sense. So Mr. mentioned about the agrotourism, ethnotourism, and all kind of environmentally friendly tourism, which is our mountains are very famous. So in that sense, I mean, making sustainable business models, I think, is it to enable such households to have more incomes, because sustainable internet means that internet is not free, right? you need some incomes to deploy this internet. In this sense, the users who are most likely guest houses making small money can afford to pay such kind of small amount. I'm not talking that internet prices in big cities. I'm talking about I'm talking about the internet price, which really covers only the cost of deployment. So in this sense, this is cheap internet, but still making sustainable is that making the people living in such remote areas unable to afford such kind of services. This will bring, of course, the better lives in the rural areas.
Excellent. Anyone else want to? Yeah, please. Johan.
Just one remark. Gudamakari is involved in our future development program, so we will continue there. Don't worry.
Excellent. Good to know that. Okay. One question. Okay.
Hi, my name is George. I represent non-profit Educare Georgia, and so we translate and localize online educational content into Georgian. That's one of the biggest online school, Khan Academies, is our project. So my question is about one of the important challenges of using internet is language barrier. So 55% of the internet is in English, and it's on the first place, and the second place is German with 6 or 7%. And if we talk about science and education, I think more than 80% is in English language. So we, my question is more maybe to Mr. Wiebler. Do you have any programs in Georgia to raise the level of English here, and to others, how do you tackle this kind of problems in other countries in your project? Thank you.
So thank you for the question. So I think the first response I would have is that the U.S. does have a number of programs to try to promote English, but also to teach it. Primarily, we implement those programs here in Georgia through our State Department Public Affairs section, so through another part of the embassy. We actually have had a number of discussions recently in USAID and also with our State Department colleagues about trying to do more in this space. And so I can't promise you right now that there will be a new USAID English program here in Georgia. I can confirm to you that we're talking about it. That discussion is focused at a really conceptual area on what would be the right way to approach this type of instruction. As you, I'm sure, know, and maybe be even working in this space, there are a lot of digital tools, maybe even artificial intelligence types of tools now that can help around translation and language learning, but also simple, again, simple translation types of things. In fact, I was at a startup pitch in Borjomi a couple of months ago, and I saw one of the really interesting pitches that I saw was a Georgian company that had actually come up with a language learning app. Maybe that's even your company. I don't know. It was fascinating, and it was really sophisticated. It wasn't only English. It was a number of different languages. So we are looking at this, and I would love to hear your thoughts or talk more.
Okay, let's now move in a little bit more into sustainability. And John, I have this question for you. Tell us about this Air Jaldi thing. I mean, that was maybe one of your first capital in terms of giving money to build a connectivity platform. And now it has become something which is very famous in India as far as I know. Air Jaldi, yes. So while you were making that investment into this Air Jaldi service, what were the factors that you really considered as the main factors to provide that investment into this kind of connectivity solution? What were those key factors? I know sustainability was perhaps one of them, but how did you measure that? I just wanted to get that blueprint on how it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for clarification, I wasn't around during that investment. So the connectivity capital has been seeded and driven by an individual named Jim Forrester, who I worked with for a little bit of time at Cisco. He went on to be an angel investor, and some of those investments that I showed on the board were more at an early stage angel investment side. Some of them are on the debt capital side. So there's a real mix there. But the focus of connectivity capital moving forward is on the debt side, not the early stage equity investment side. But just to sort of talk about these investments, I mean, it's really much the same across the investments in that they are investments into commercial enterprises, even though they're small scale, or at least started off as small scale commercial enterprises. So the focus from an investor perspective is really to see that the entity itself is supporting itself not by reoccurring grant money, which you tend to see sometimes in some of these projects, but actually supporting itself and growing because of providing a service that then is being paid for, right? There's value that's being generated in the activity that it's doing, and that there are customers that are paying for it. On the customer side, it could be individual subscribers, and the entities that we look at are really mostly have been service providers that are operating in rural areas where there isn't a mobile network service that's operating. So Air Jaldi is a good example. This is before Reliance Jio days. Mawingu in Kenya, operating in spaces where Safaricom has not traditionally been, same with the others. Or they're operating in areas where there is mobile network coverage, but the pricing is still at a level that's prohibitive for low-income users. So the too much Wi-Fi example in South Africa, where I live in the Philippines, you have users who aren't able to still afford the mobile network operator packages, even though there are sachet packages where you can still buy mobile network data service for one day or for a few hours. But those pricing levels still aren't as interesting or available to a lot of low-income users. And so when you have the ability to pump in a lot of capacity, either through places that have terrestrial fiber or microwave backhaul, you're able to offer lower price points. And so what we look for is that, yes, that these entities are covering their costs, right? Your revenues have to cover your costs, and that you aren't excessively burdened by debt or running up a huge number of liabilities. So it's really much the same ratios that are used in a lot of other investment sectors, but one of the things that I think we need to see more of in connectivity is learn from the experiences of the microfinance sector back in the 1990s, where you had the ability, or you had donors like CGAP, like the World Bank, recognize that there needs to be more work that's done to build up microfinance institutions, MFIs, that then are able then to support small entities or small operations. We don't have that in connectivity, right? And I think that's one opportunity for the sector to see how do we actually replicate the microfinance sector. Also, the off-grid pay-as-you-go energy sector, where you've seen that really boom in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. I think there's a lot for connectivity, the small-scale connectivity sector to learn from the expansion of that sector.
Excellent, super. Yep. I mean, we have talked about small and medium enterprises, or those days when, in fact, still now they are known as one of the key component of the economy. If your economy has those small and medium enterprises flourishing and they get that opportunity, your economy booms as well. And honestly speaking, 10 years back, I cannot think that, but now I know those small and medium enterprises. Some of them have actually invested through some of the funding that they got from donors and some development agencies to invest into connectivity. And solutions like community networks actually give that opportunity, as far as I can think, to those entrepreneurs who perhaps are eager and they have a business model and they want to innovate into something, and these kind of solutions which are small scale, maybe connecting say 1,000 people, 500 people, and then getting some revenue out of it. So that's also a factor that I think has a lot of importance, especially when we talk about the overall policies and regulatory, and that's something that we'll discuss more when we'll have the session after the lunch break, that how perhaps these kind of initiatives can be supported by the government and the regulatory framework. So these people who want to innovate into connectivity, who perhaps can get some money as well, because it's not a large investment, by the way. It's not that traditional telecommunication infrastructure investment that you have to put in.
It's not large, but it's still infrastructure, and that's the problem. There's a lot of money out there that's for social entrepreneurs, yes, but this is still infrastructure investment. So when you have very low average revenue per user, you stretch out that payback period. So you really need patient capital.
Yep. Excellent, good point. Okay, let's get to the end of our discussion, and I know Peter has to go and has to leave early. So Peter, I'll start with you. Give us some 1-2 statements as your concluding remarks on how you see this thing moving forward and how these kind of complementary last mile access solutions can help to connect the unconnected.
Sure, thanks. So I will. I don't want to dodge your question, but I think to a certain extent others will be able to answer it with far better fluency than I wanted to talk, just to say a few things about maybe the downsides of connectivity, and I think we all know this, but we've focused a great deal in this part of this panel, and also I'm sure at the beginning of the event yesterday. There are some downsides, and we're seeing some of those here in Georgia. So connectivity has the other side to it, which is greater access and connectivity to misinformation and disinformation. Those are unfortunate realities in our world, whether one lives in Georgia or even in the United States. And so I think all of us, whether we're Georgians or Europeans, other Europeans or Americans, wherever you're from, I think this is one of the challenges of our age, is how to separate facts from non-facts, and how to handle disinformation and misinformation, and how to prepare citizens about how to do so as well. So that's one thing. The second aspect of connectivity is one that should be, I think, very, very fresh on a lot of Georgians' minds here after the large hack that happened 2 weeks ago, which is that there are increasing vulnerabilities to being connected in the modern world, and whether those hacks are coming from state actors or non-state actors, whether the purpose is political, to destabilize, or whether the purpose is simply to grab access to financial information and basically steal funds or compromise information. That is that's one of the downsides to increased connectivity. And I think there are a lot of practical steps that we can take and we can encourage in terms of what we call cyber hygiene or connectivity hygiene, but that's another area which is, I think, something that's part of the package of connectivity and of the community networking aspect that I think bears a lot of discussion and obviously gets a lot of attention. So, sorry not to answer your question, but just to flag those two sides.
I think that's a very important perspective. When we talk about connectivity, we have to see the both sides, and we have to be ready. I mean, we cannot give a tool to people who perhaps have never used that tool blindly, knowing that might be something which perhaps can damage them. So excellent, good point, Peter. Abdulaziz, and also when you answer, please just quickly tell how your institute is interested and can perhaps make some investment into digital infrastructure, especially from the European Investment Bank. So maybe that would be a benefit for the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat much of what I said before earlier, but definitely, we see connectivity playing a key role in Georgia's, economic development, social cohesion, and hopefully, to some degree also combating cyber terrorism and disinformation as well. I think, for many people in the audience, perhaps they may or may not know, but we have been involved in Georgia's digital, sector, so to speak, for the last several years, and the bank works very closely with a variety of key, partners, both the government itself, but also the regulator, institutions like OpenNet, JITA, etc., and of course with financiers, other financiers, private sector ISPs, because we believe that their participation, without their participation, you are not going to be able to extend the connectivity. So we are looking forward to a very exciting few years ahead. There's been a lot of talk in the past about, all of these digitization programs, e-Georgia, e-government, etc. I think now there's a lot of momentum behind it, and we are squarely in the middle of all of this. So I'll say that much for now.
Thank you. Also, I couldn't add too much, but let me emphasize some issues which are core from point of view of a democracy process support. I think internet allows use this connection to the world and between people to support local communities on a democratic process, and also we can support as a donors sense of ownership between government and local authorities, and this connection with local communities. I think it's a great deal to make people not remote from public services and their institutions.
Yeah, maybe just quickly. I mean, I guess I have to admit that I've been familiar with community networks for a few years, but it's really been only these last 2 days where I've started to recognize that there's really a lot of heterogeneity in the entities that are considered community networks. There's a lot of scale. So there's a lot of upside, and there's a lot of room to grow with community networks as part of the overall picture. I think before I may have fallen into the category that I thought, oh, okay, community networks interesting, but it's very niche, right? But actually, that's not the case. So bless me, because I've sinned in not not embracing the community networks mantra earlier. I think I would just say that I think there's a real opportunity to support community networks here. I think it's something that we want to do more of. It's just a matter of trying to figure out the right sort of vehicles that that can provide that sort of funding at the scale, at the smaller scale, for entities like community networks and local ISPs.
Let me summarize the key factors of sustainability, what we have experienced so far, which is very much important to have sustainable community networks, probably in Georgia, and maybe it can be applied to outside of Georgia also. This is, of course, a multi-stakeholder approach. You saw how many organizations, international, national, local, regional, was involved, starting from donors, government, central as well as local, to the community also. This is one of the key factors. Another one is, of course, the ownership of the internet. This is a local, in our case, this is a local organization based on local people. This is another key factor who will run the internet, and how the locals will feel that they are the owners of the internet, because at the end of the day they are end users. So they are the kind of guarantee of your sustainability in the long run, because as I said, there is no free lunch in this case. Tusheti Georgia Development Fund buys internet in Garrity and deploys to Tusheti, right? And then it requires certain finances to do that, right? So in order to have very financially, not only financially, I mean technically, socially sustainable community networks, you do need to have very strong end users. In our case, this is a private sector, either guest house owners or farm, or even government representatives such as National Park Administration and so on and so forth, which are users of the internet of Tusheti. So.
Okay, there is not much left to add, but to keep it short, I think for any access to digital infrastructure, there are different ways. Of course, the important part is also access to core infrastructure of broadband in the whole country. And here, of course, the OpenNet initiative needs to be named. And as I said at the beginning, as European Investment Bank, we have a lot of experience worldwide in financing different projects, and not only in infrastructure for digital access, but also for effective usage of it and creating the economy and the services based on that, which then of course contribute to the economic development and to the social development in many different ways, like more transparency. Let's take government, more high-quality jobs. Let's take development of all the applications and services based on digital economy, better healthcare, better access to information. So let's hope we will be able to develop it in Georgia together. Thank you.
Super, just super duper. I mean, all of the comments that came up, the answers, the audience, I think it was a very good, great discussion. What I can conclude is that all of us understand that collaboration is critical. There is a lot of opportunity that we can open through these kind of last mile solutions like community network, for the community, by the community, community empowerment, and of course the sustainability. John, I like your comment that previously you used to think it's a niche thing, but no, it can be that important tool to bridge the access gap and connect the unconnected, and that's what we as Internet Society believe in as well. So thank you again so much from all those great organizations that you work for. Please let's continue joining hands together and making sure that we are able to take this further and give those people who are not having this luxury, in fact, a need to internet to be connected. As they say in Georgia, I've learned it, of course, I'll say it, Madloba, in fact, Didi Madloba, which means thank you so much. So lunch is ready, as I've been told. Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for a wonderful, and you to yourself as well, as being a wonderful audience, and I'll pass it on to Frederick.
Thank you, Naveed. Just to tell you, lunch now until 2 o'clock, so let's continue the conversation. Thank you.